Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot. We charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
The Inner Circle travels to the Illyrian war camp to the disdain of Lord Devlin and his fellow Illyrians. With the help of a glamour, Elaine returns to her human guise to beseech her former fiancé's aid in providing sanctuary for the staff of the Archeron household. But the ruse fails when Jurian reveals that he already informed the humans of the true events at Hybern and his intention to defeat the king. The Inner Circle race to gather their forces as they take on Hybern in the first of several battles in the Night Court. With an initial victory under their belt, Feyre struggles to watch as the Night Court army slowly lose against Hybern.
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of the book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, death, and depression, will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we're exploring Sarah J. Maas's most ambitious novel in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. This week, we're discussing chapters 51 through 56 in A Court of Wings and Ruin. The questions we ask ourselves this week include, are the characters and readers expected to reassess themselves and their assumptions at this point in the novel? And are we successful?
Themes we'll see in this section are otherness and mourning.
We open part 3 of this novel, titled High Lady, with chapter 51, where Feyre and the Inner Circle are met with brisk weather at the Illyrian mountain camp, despite it being summer. Quote, "There were some lovely days," Rhys assured me when I scowled. But is thinking about and scowling at the weather really about the weather here? Or is the weather perhaps a reflection of the Illyrians who are less than happy to see the Inner Circle? Because remember, Rhys also tells Feyre this, quote, "Cooler weather was better anyway. When an army was involved, heat made tempers rise, and considering the Illyrians were a testy lot to begin with." Remember that little tidbit for later.
First, this is why I'm a Night Court girly, because it's damp and it's cold and it's in the middle of summer. Sign me up. That is my natural home. But let's also consider the following. Just that morning, they were waking up at the Dawn Court. It's a place that Feyre expressed interest in the beauty and the design of it all. Then the wall comes down and they all have to go home and then regroup and then they're back. Okay, so just keep that in mind. They were in the Dawn Court, I'd say an hour and a half ago, and I'm being generous. And now Rhys has taken Feyre to a cold, damp Illyrian war camp. To me, that comment feels like Rhys is almost apologizing to Feyre that he couldn't give her more than this, more than a war, as if saying that the weather can get better that what he has to offer her can get better.
I think that's a brilliant point, that Rhys naturally is going to apologize for everything now because he thought they had more time. He thought they could fix the wall. He thought he could prolong the moment that they go to war, but nope, not anymore.
And then it's not even like other courts where they're at least a little bit more chill, you know, like they're Switzerland, right? Like they're, you know, more neutral.
Yeah.
They're, you know, he's like, I'm the one who's in the midst of all this.
Yeah. I'm leading the charge.
It's a shit hand to have.
Feyre takes on a warped perspective of her friends Cassian and Azriel when she's in the war camp. Quote, unlike my friends, 1 or 2 siphons adorned other Illyrians' hands. The 7 Azriel and Cassian wore seemed almost vulgar by comparison. Why is it that Cassian and Azriel are vulgar and not the other Illyrians weak or childlike?
When I first read that line, my mind made this jump. The inner circle keeps making vulgar gestures to one another, and now their power is almost vulgar, as if there's power in vulgarity. But it also gives the illusion that power should almost be embarrassing, or is seen as showy. Unlike Feyre or even Rhys, Cassian and Azriel are the ones who wear their powers on their sleeve, and on their knees, and on their chest, and on their shoulder. Everywhere. There is no mystery about their power. It's on full display.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective that Feyre is taking on here.
Later on, we're going to talk about the costumes that they wear for battle. Uniform.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about like why are they dressed differently?
Yeah.
It's almost as if the theme for this week is otherness.
Oh, good job.
Thank you.
I forgot that, honestly.
Yeah, me too.
Feyre also continues this interesting perspective as the conversation between the Illyrians and Rhys continue. Quote, the gathered males only looked at Rhys, as if the 2 Illyrians, Cassian and Azriel, flanking him were little more than trees. So at this point, Cassian and Azriel aren't even sentient beings anymore? Why is Feyre seeing this perspective? It's almost as if she's taking on the prejudice of the Illyrians around her. I wonder if it's to some extent because Rhys, who's back in his fine clothes and not showing his wings, is wearing his High Lord mask. Like Jac said, it's almost as if their power has made them other. Rhys certainly reduces the other Illyrians to animals by thinking that he has no intention of loosening the leash on them. But it's just weird that not even Cassian and Azriel are animals. They're just trees.
They're just trees. You know, trees are nice.
Sure.
Feyre flies into a tree.
It is more powerful than she is.
Yeah. It is like a weird thing to point out because this is her interpretation of how Declan, is that his name again? Devlin. Like deviled eggs, right? That's what I think of when I read it. It is like an interpretation of how she thinks he is viewing them, which means she's interpreting it as saying, okay, he doesn't think that they're bugs to crush. Maybe that's him recognizing there's power to them. But he's not going to give them power over him.
I could see that.
Rhys is in his High Lord setting. Cassian is in his general setting, which then leaves the question about Azriel. Quote, the voice of the High Lord, the voice of a warrior who had fought in the war. Cassian frequently added his own orders. Azriel just stared them all down. He had not wanted to come to the camp months ago. Disliked being back here. Hated these people, his heritage. I bring this question to the table. Is there power in voice? And are they wearing masks or playing roles? Because Rhys is stepping into his High Lord role, Cassian into his general role. And while Azriel, in theory, should be stepping into his quiet spy master role, Feyre just said the contrary. She believes that Azriel isn't staying quiet because it's his job. He's staying quiet because he's affected by this.
It's such an interesting change in perspective. If we think back to earlier episodes when Feyre was at the Spring Court, I talked a lot about there being power in silence.
Mm-hmm.
So in some way, is Azriel trying to be powerful in his silence and therefore come across as intimidating? But to your point, Jac, Feyre is viewing it as the opposite. And it's almost as if Azriel's been reduced to the age he was of his trauma by being here. He is that 11-year-old who was abused by his brothers and doesn't know how to fly, and so chooses to not engage with these individuals that remind him of that trauma.
Totally. I mean, it is funny because if he was doing his role, it would still be quiet.
Yeah.
But there's no power in his silence right now.
Right. And something I just said reminded me from a few episodes ago when Mor and Rhys fought after the Court of Nightmares. Mor was reduced to the age of her trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why she acted like such a brat.
Yeah.
Because she was 17 again.
Yep. You kind of step back to who you were when you're back in that trauma setting.
Yeah.
So sad.
It is very sad. A little less sad or more sad, I can't decide. When the Illyrians see Nesta, they are put off by her. And they're put off by her more than they're put off by anyone else in the Inner Circle, Azriel included. They treat Nesta as if she too is an object or maybe something sinister, as if they can sense the magic within her. Which leads me to this question. When Nesta says she is a witch, is she just messing with the Illyrians, or is this a reflection of some deep-seated self-hatred?
I love that you asked this because it makes me wonder if Nesta, on some level, believes that she could be a witch. Spoiler for Silver Flames. I just pray that you've read Silver Flames.
By this point?
By
Seriously.
this point. I really hope so. But just in case, for those few. I love Nesta because Nesta knows that by saying yes, she's going to piss off the Illyrians. I love a good, I'll say whatever I need to say to piss you off. I don't care.
Yeah.
We know that Nesta doesn't know the difference between witches and fae. She has to ask that. When Mor explains that witches use tools and spells to harness more power to them than the cauldron allotted, what does that kind of remind you of? It reminds me of Nesta using the trove in Silver Flames. So I'm not saying that Nesta's a witch, but it would be cool if she felt some kind of affinity to that early on.
I mean, she does scry later, which is very much a witch thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Maybe she is a witch.
Maybe.
There are witches in Throne of Glass.
Right. I mean, maybe, again, Silver Flame spoiler.
Yeah.
Maybe after some of her power has been taken, she resorts to witchcraft.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she still has the trove.
Right.
They haven't gotten rid of that.
Right.
And, in witches in Throne of Glass, people are going to be so mad at me.
Spoiler.
I can't remember if they have sharp teeth or if they have talons. I think they have sharp teeth. But if they have talons, in this section, in these chapters, Nesta's compared to having talons quite a bit.
Oh, you're right.
Multiple times in these chapters.
Keep an eye out for that.
We're going to get a lot of emails, but make sure you email us, please.
While all of this has been going on, the Inner Circle has been keeping Elaine hidden from view at Feyre's insistence. Because despite Elaine being the one who thought up the plan to go to Grayson and beg for help, Feyre still feels the need to protect Elaine from everything. Everyone is underestimating Elaine, in my opinion. Let's look at how the others are viewing her. When the Illyrians see Elaine, Feyre thinks of her as, quote, a rose bloom in a mud field, filled with galloping horses. In Feyre's eyes, Elaine is no better than a fragile rose under a stampede of horses. In comparison, the Illyrians are the horses, the war camp, the mud field.
That's Feyre's point of view, but then Mor steps in here and kind of weaponizes Elaine. But in a good way. At least I'm going to say good way. When Devlin demands to keep Nesta away from the females and children, Mor steps aside to reveal a wide-eyed Elaine. And honestly, it's more of a punchline to a joke because, Devlin's like, you better keep her away. I don't know why he sounds like this, but I imagine that's what he does sound like. And then she moves over and there's sweet, innocent Elaine. And Mor's using Elaine's innocence as a weapon.
I'm so glad you pointed that out because I didn't think about it. Because in my mind, I was like, shit, move, Mor.
I just kind of, to me, I thought that was one of the funniest things Mor did. Okay, and then leans to the side.
You're going to tell me to keep this one away from the females and children too?
Yeah, all right, buddy.
When Mor goes to glamour Elaine, she tells Elaine to act human. Elaine responds that, quote, it's the same as how I act now, which just underscores what we were saying last week, that Elaine has yet to accept her faeness, which we're going to talk a lot about this episode.
It's so important to hammer this point home because we need to see that Elaine is distancing herself from being fae, but will quickly grow to resent being fae in these chapters. As we know, Elaine thinks that there's some chance that her and Grayson will get back together. She's holding out hope for humanity. And when that rejection happens, it's going to hit her so much harder than it did for Feyre, and I'll even say Nesta. And Elaine is going to take that out on Lucien. And more like the concept of Lucien because he's not there.
Feyre responds to Elaine's statement that her being human and Fae, there's no difference, by saying to keep the vision talk to herself. Unless it's something you can't control, Feyre says. Elaine says she can and she will. I wonder if this means that Elaine could keep it under control before and choosing to retreat into her visions was a cry for help? Or did it mean Elaine couldn't control it and she's just putting on a brave face right now?
I think Elaine has gotten good at hiding them because there's several points when, and I'll get into another example later, when Elaine just stares and stares, and I'm convinced that she's having a vision. I think she's getting better at keeping them to herself.
I think you're right. I think that if we think about her statement to Cassian and how much it spooked everybody, and, you know, there's the question of, has she seen her father's death already? She probably knows to speak the visions aloud will be concerning to everybody, and she is a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Therefore, don't speak your truth.
Not the lesson for the listeners.
No, but that's Elaine's mentality right now.
And imagine how scary that is to get snippets of the future. It sounds like it's like a little bit more mushy, jumbled, right? Like it's not like a clear cut vision. But imagine getting these visions and these flashes, maybe not often, but often enough that you have to decide, do I share this? Is it worth sharing?
Yeah. It is concerning.
And I think she's making those decisions much earlier on than Feyre or anyone gives her credit for.
Yeah, I agree.
There's something kind of haunting about this moment. Quote, Elaine studied her hands, turning them over. I hadn't realized how ordinary it looked. First, I want to talk about the fact that Elaine is looking at her hands. Hands in literature have many different meanings. Strength, kindness, stability. For SJM, I believe it tends to represent a person's true inner power. Let's look at the hands that have been called out in this book so far. Azriel and Helian's scarred hands, Ianthe's crushed hands, and the human queen's aged hands. All of these things show their inner strength or lack thereof. So with Elaine looking at her own hands and saying she didn't realize how ordinary it looked, it could be a realization that she has more power now, or a reflection that she doesn't see herself as powerful.
I also wonder to what extent it is, oh, my Fae and human hands look the same, not realizing how ordinary maybe her Faeness was. I also thought of a couple other hand examples. We see Nesta point at the King of Hybern with the death promise.
Yeah.
That's one example of hands.
Yep.
And then something that came up in Thorns and Roses and will come up again at the end of Wings and Ruin is Feyre's hands and the connection to the cauldron.
Yeah, you're right. Power in hands. Now to double down on this and to look at the sentence again. Quote, I hadn't realized how ordinary it looked. It being the key word I'm going to get hung up on. Elaine is not saying they or my. She's not claiming ownership of her own hands. There's no it about her hands. Like, you don't look at a body part and be like, it's weird. No, they. Her hands are attached to her. By saying they or I think it's Elaine having an understanding that she's not human anymore. She might have power, but I personally think she's still in denial.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to my Faeness appears ordinary statement.
I hadn't thought of it that way because she looks at her hands and she goes, I never realized how ordinary they looked. And you'd assume she's thinking her human hands.
Right.
Because Moore immediately says, no, like, you're still lovely.
Right.
But, you know, whether that's the case or not, I just love the idea of, well, let's move it slightly. What changes when you look at it in this position? And I think a lot changes.
I'm so glad you brought up Moore's statement because Moore's statement is, to me, such an obvious misunderstanding of what Elaine is saying. I actually don't think Elaine cares what she appears like. I think she actually is annoyed that people only focus on her beauty.
I agree. I think she resents her looks.
Right. And so for Moore to be like, oh, well, you still look lovely. Like, you're obviously not in tune with what Elaine is saying.
Right.
She does not give a shit about that.
Yes. However, still tell me I'm pretty.
Also, it makes me wonder if Moore's into Elaine. Like, maybe she's attracted to her. We don't know.
There's something about Azriel being attracted to Elaine, and then it makes sense to me that Moore would be too. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting love triangle.
Right? Or it could be the perfect love triangle.
Oh, yeah. I think I like it better than Lucien and Elaine and Azriel. What if it's Lucien, Moore, and Elaine? What if that's the love triangle? Ooh. I'm in.
What I would like to clarify here is I don't want a love triangle where they're all fighting for each other's affection. I want a love triangle
where they're all affectionate.
Yeah.
The inner circle then winnowed to Grayson's estate in the human territory. When they get there, we learn that they are surrounded by, quote, the heat and sunshine of a full mortal summer. Remember what Rhys said earlier? Heat makes tempers rise. It's a nice little foreshadowing of what is about to happen while the group is here, from my point of view.
Let's get back to some hand imagery. Quote, her, being Elaine's, grip on my hand was as strong as the iron around her finger. What makes this sentence so impactful is realizing that iron has no power against the Fae like the humans think it does. Iron is in fact weak, just like Elaine's grip on humanity and herself.
As the group examines the estate, Feyre thinks that, quote, Nesta had been right. It was like a prison, this place. What other location has Feyre thought of as a prison? Well, if we go back to Thorns and Roses, she viewed the cottage she shared with her family when she was still human as a prison. Remember what Elaine thought that cottage as? It was a sanctuary, a haven, a place of hope. It's no coincidence that there are similarities between the views Elaine and Feyre have independently of the cottage and Grayson's estate. Feyre views both as a prison, Elaine views both as a sanctuary.
I don't mention it, but when they take him to the guardhouse, I always kind of interpret it as doghouse.
I do too.
Like, we don't mention that, but I wrote it in my notes, but I was like, I'm not going to add it. But it just had such, like, take him to the doghouse.
Yeah, because they are other.
Wow, our theme was so spot on.
Yeah, without even realizing it. Is the meaning, though, of prison and sanctuary for these two locations the same? In Thorns and Roses, we learned that Elaine's perspective came from an inner strength that Feyre admired. Does Feyre still admire Elaine's strength here? Or does she even view it as a strength anymore? Has it become, maybe, naivety?
Finally, when Elaine calls out to the guard, she says, tell him that Elaine Archeron begs for sanctuary. My heart breaks for this. One, because Elaine's using her full name, her human name, something we've never heard her do before. She's trying to humanize herself once again. Second, she's saying that she's begging for sanctuary when she's actually there to beg for other people. Elaine could have easily said, tell him I'm here. You know, Elaine, his bride, his fiance. He'll want to come out. You don't have to add the begging for sanctuary part. This gives us more of an idea of where Elaine's at mentally. She feels like she needs sanctuary from being Fae, from her new world.
So sad. At the beginning of chapter 52, though Grayson agrees to see Elaine, it is only in the safety of the guardhouse or doghouse, as Jac suggested, and it's nowhere close to the fortress he and his father live in. We learned that Elaine met Grayson at his father's ball in the fortress, because honestly, Grayson's locked up more securely than any Disney princess I've ever seen.
Yep. This is the part where I think Elaine is having another vision. Quote, Elaine stared and stared at the fortress, a ball, his father's ball. I personally do not trust when Elaine stares at anything. I will call it out time and time again. And we already know that Elaine doesn't just see the future, but the past as well. Think about her seeing the Queen's hands and Vasa. So I think it's very reasonable that she could be looking into the past.
While the group waits, Elaine chooses to stand at the front. Either in eagerness to see Grayson or to protect the group, I don't know. Honestly, I'm a little torn. On one hand, it speaks to her hope for Grayson. But my first instinct has always been that maybe Elaine is standing in front of the group to protect them. That maybe her resolve and strength to face him, regardless of how things go, she intends to take the brunt of the impact.
That's interesting because I hadn't thought about Elaine wanting to protect the group. I always got the feeling that she would have abandoned everyone there in a heartbeat if Grayson had welcomed her back with open arms and told her, hey, I'll take you, but you got to leave everyone else behind.
I think that's definitely true. And though Elaine ends up being heartbroken from this interaction, she's also capable of knowing Grayson's intent. You know, for example, when Elaine brought up this whole plan, she told Nesta, he hates you.
Yeah.
And she told Feyre, he doesn't know you. Like, she was very blunt about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think she knows to some extent how this is going to go down. So she faces it with hope, but I think she also realizes it's not going to go well. And even if Grayson is okay, his father's not going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I think she's come mentally prepared for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I can see that. And now as you're talking, I'm thinking like, what if she's almost, not that she's worried that he won't see her first, but almost throwing herself there right in front of everyone, being like, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
Don't miss me. I'm here.
It's almost the reverse of what happened at the Illyrian camp.
Yeah.
Where she was being hidden by everyone. And now she's like, no, you can't hide me because it's going to go really poorly if you do.
I mean, this is the first time in the entire book, I'm not going to say book series, but in the entire book for sure, where she's stepping forward.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to say that. In the whole book series, she's never stepped forward. Nesta's always the one who's in front of her, or Feyre. This is the first time that she's physically stepping forward.
Right.
Sucks because it doesn't go well.
No, it doesn't. While they wait for Grayson and Nolan, Feyre, for the first time in a long time, gets irritated by being enclosed in tight quarters, possibly enhanced by the heat. Quote, letting them shut us in here to wait, it rubbed against some nerve, made my body restless, a cold sweat breaking out, too small, not enough air. Though Rhys tries to comfort Feyre by saying that the place cannot hold her, it's Nesta who brings Feyre comfort with her emotional vulnerability. This is a really beautiful moment where, in front of everyone aloud, the sisters share how their past trauma has impacted them. Feyre cannot stand small spaces, while Nesta cannot submerge in a tub. Feyre is so touched by this, she offers to install something else for Nesta when they get home, aka a shower. But does she?
This is all so beautiful and it hurts. And I once again lament on how much of a shift there is between the sisters, between now and Silver Flames. It makes me so sad.
Yeah, it makes me mad, actually.
Now to talk more about Silver Flames. In my mind, Feyre installs a shower as soon as they get home, right? Like, that's what I'm hoping. Or whatever they have to imitate a shower. When Nesta leaves to her own apartment, and, you know, somewhere between now and Silver Flames, she goes back to a tub, which keeps bringing back her trauma over and over again. And it's almost like she's punishing herself with that. Feyre and Nesta are bonded by trauma, and they are also bonded in this moment by both of them needing to protect Elaine.
A thought I had while we were prepping is that they're bonded by their trauma, but they both still have a lot to heal from. And the only way for them to heal from their trauma is to break away, because to stay bonded by trauma only continues trauma rather than allows the healing process to take place.
I mean, Nesta has so much trauma with and resentment with Feyre because Feyre always took care of Nesta.
Yeah.
And now here's Feyre taking care of Nesta again.
Yep.
And although Nesta wants that, because it helps her not have panic attacks and be able to clean herself properly. It's coming from Feyre and Rhys. But now that I'm thinking about it, how quickly do you think Nesta gets her own apartment between the war ending, them going back home, and Silver Flames?
Isn't she moved out by Frost and Starlight?
I think so.
So pretty quick.
So maybe Nesta never got, maybe like that was what that drove her out.
Yeah, maybe.
Because they go straight to the war camp after this, and they're out there. They don't head back to Valaris until it's all done. So maybe like Nesta came home.
And just found her own place.
Well, I'm thinking maybe Nesta came home, saw that Feyre kept her promise, which hurts, and it brings everything back up again more.
Who knows?
Right? Like she comes home and yeah.
We'll have to pay more attention when we eventually read Frost and Starlight.
Yep.
Sadly, like with every moment of emotional vulnerability between Nesta and Feyre, they get interrupted, this time by Grayson's arrival along with his father Nolan. Elaine is still as a doe at their approach. That doe reference, that human Feyre reference, is back because Elaine wants so badly to be human. Grayson is described as, quote, a mortal ideal of a knight who would swoop a beautiful maiden onto his horse and ride off into the sunset, so at odds from the savage strength of the Illyrians, the cultivated lethalness of Morn Amren, from my own clawing and shredding, and Nesta's. Maybe this description is a red herring, meant to fool readers into thinking there's a chance Grayson will be with Elaine, that he will still love her and swoop her up. Because when you look at the power dynamics of that description, Grayson is as fragile as Elaine's rose bloom under galloping horses.
I love that. Looking at the same sentence, but through a feminist lens, I can see this being a narrative around humans being more sexist and women being at their mercy. Now, don't get me wrong. I think we all know how sexist the Fae can be. If not, go back to episode 14, where I lose it. But we've heard comments from Nesta and even Feyre before about how humans have a more backwards view. Feyre is noting that by embracing their power, more Amren and even Nesta, they are not these maidens who need to be scooped up to be saved. Women are capable of holding their own. And we see that with Feyre and Rhys and Nesta and Cassian. You know, there's the dynamic of, hey, I can do this. Yeah, I don't need you.
Mm-hmm.
But please and thank you, I do need you. Who do we know that does a whole lot of scooping and saving? Azriel. Azriel and Elaine. Literally, he goes and scoops and saves her later in this book.
And he did earlier. He scooped her up and brought her from the House of Wind to the townhouse.
Yep. It wouldn't be an episode if I didn't make a point about how they're not fit together. Although Feyre says that Grayson is so at odds with the Illyrians, what I see is a connection about this ideal and Azriel.
Which, if you think about it, is why Elaine becomes attracted to Azriel, because he does the scooping and saving that Grayson was going to do for her.
Yep. But what does she really need is the same thing that both of her sisters need, is a partner who encouraged them to be able to scoop themselves up.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yep.
And that's, I don't think Azriel is capable of encouraging a partner to be able to take care of themselves.
No. Because he's a narcissist.
Yeah. Not that he wants you hurt, but
no.
He's too busy trying to save the person.
Because he's too busy trying to justify his existence by doing the saving.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, his existence is pointless and worthless if he's not there to help someone.
Yep.
Woo!
Yep.
That felt like you just kicked me in the gut.
I was going to say, I feel like I stabbed myself in the heart right there.
That one hurt.
It's like, oh, am I talking about myself?
Several of our listeners are in their car looking at the speakers or wherever, being like, wow, I didn't expect this morning.
Yeah. Too much information from you guys.
I was just attacked. Oh, no. I'm like,
attacked.
I'm wondering how many people can relate to this.
Yeah, true. I bet we have 25% of our listeners relate. 25% of our listeners are like, keep it to yourself.
Amy just made a really funny face.
I imagine that's the face that my dog makes when he's like, what the fuck are you doing?
I think it's also the face that you and I make at each other.
Yes, regularly.
What was it? That was the face you gave me when I asked to smell the acetone.
Yes. That was strange.
Yeah.
Nesta and Feyre speak for Elaine when she cannot. Nesta explains how Nesta was turned and the threat to the humans from Hybern, while Feyre uses her family name for the first time in this book. Quote, "My name is Feyre Artron. I am High Lady of the Night Court." Wow, this is significant for Feyre, to own all the parts of herself in a way she never has before, both human and high fae, her past and her present all at once.
Yep. It's beautiful.
It is really beautiful.
I still wish I knew Rhys's last name, but...
Yeah, it's true. I'm sure there's a reason why we don't.
What if Rhys changed his last name to Artron?
Rhys Artron.
I respect it.
I do too. Grayson asks why Elaine is with all these fae, the inner circle, and for the first time, Elaine slips up. Quote, they believe. This is a sign to me Elaine is actively resisting her fae identity, though obviously she does align with them on some level as well.
Just embrace this moment. Elaine stopped herself in the middle of a sentence to then correct herself and show her jumping teams. She just othered her own sisters and the inner circle. And if I was Feyre or Nesta, I'd just be like, excuse me, bitch. Did you just...
Yeah.
Did you just they me?
Yeah.
No. We.
Yeah. Bitch, please.
Yeah.
You said your name is Elaine Artron. I said my name's Feyre Artron. Obviously, we're related.
Yeah, they believe. And it's such a dumb part to say they believe, which it's not dumb saying SJM, you're dumb for putting it there. To me, it shows how quickly and how small of a sentence or thought process that Elaine is so ready to jump ship and abandon her family.
Well, to me, it also shows at a subconscious level, Elaine is on the same page with Nesta and Feyre and everyone else around her. but she is forcing herself to desire her humanity. She's forcing herself to remain in that human box because obviously she's in love with Grayson and she wants to stay with him.
Okay, look, you make good points, and that's true, and I agree with all of it. If I was her sister, I'd be a petty bitch, and I'd remember that shit forever. I'd be like, remember when we were backing you up, and you said they?
We are two different types of humans.
Bullshit, you'd be pissed off too. You'd hold that one too.
But let's be real. Elaine did not need to slip up with her words to get caught because Nolan and Grayson know the truth. Thanks to Jurian, who finally makes a reappearance 40-something chapters later.
Yeah, I forget how much time really does.
Half the novel.
Yeah. Okay, yes.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It is a lot. At the start of chapter 53, we see Jurian, and Feyre immediately notes, quote, Jurian held up his tanned hands, new calluses dotting his palms and fingers. New, from the remade body he had to train and handle weapons these months. We're seeing that his hands are new, his calluses are new, and soon our perspective of him is about to be new. Hands, they're everywhere.
I love that you point this out because Feyre made the same observation of Rhys at the start of Mist and Fury. New calluses.
Oh.
When he first started taking her back to the Night Court.
Yeah, you're right. Good job.
And was there going to be a change of perspective then?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there was.
Yeah. Huh. So if you want people to think about you differently,
show them that you've got calluses.
Yeah, get some calluses on those hands.
Jurian explains his role with Hybern, that he'd gone to the Queens to persuade them to join Hybern, which ended up being easy because they wanted what Hybern had to offer. Feyre observes during his explanation that, quote, Jurian's eyes gleamed bright. Not with madness, I realized, but clarity.
It's funny, except it's not really funny, but because it's actually done on purpose. But it's amazing that the two characters who were considered mad, Elaine and Jurian, we then both see them as sane.
Except I do want to point out Elaine was crazy while Jurian was mad.
Such a good freaking call out, because there is definitely some underlying sexism between calling women crazy and men mad. And I bet if we looked into literature, men are described more as mad while women are described as crazy.
Absolutely, because think about it this way. Well, I was thinking one of the examples I gave during prep was Mad Eye Moody. You could call him Crazy Eye Moody. It would still be relevant, but we call him Mad Eye Moody because he's male. But also, madness is often associated, I think, with torture. Like you tortured someone to madness. Like they had sanity and you just pushed them past the brink. Whereas crazy, you're born crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I think you also kind of said that there's a little bit of dignity to madness too, in a way.
I think so too.
Or you're holding on to something.
Right. And I think that there's still a granule of sanity under madness, whereas crazy is just batshit crazy. Like there's no rationale to the crazy.
Yeah.
Whereas there might be a rationale to the madness.
I love that. I do catch myself really often on what context I use crazy and how I'm using to describe a person or a situation. I stopped using it to describe people. And for me personally, that's always my red flags, is if a guy describes their ex as crazy, doesn't matter what actions that individual did. If any man describes a woman as crazy,
they're a red flag.
That's always been a red flag for me. And at this point, I've been proven true every time.
Yep. Whether it's people in your life or your friends' lives.
Yep.
Going back to the text, Feyre has been making assumptions about Jurian, about Elaine, about all sorts of people and their motivations since day one. Jurian is the latest on a long list that include both Elaine and Tamlin.
But what I love is that it's not just Feyre who's messed up on this one. Everyone here has screwed up.
Yep.
The only person who hasn't screwed up here, who's just chilling, living their life, Nesta.
Yeah. She worried about Elaine.
I'm just talking about in this instance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. She's just observing.
Yeah. If we step too far from this instance, we see mess up pretty quickly.
Yeah. We've talked a lot this season about the monster within and the lesser of two evils. I think related to both of these themes are these questions. What do we choose to see in ourselves versus others? And when are we willing to see the whole person?
I think when we look at other people, we see the worst of ourselves in them or our own insecurities in them.
Yep.
So if someone is making an observation about another person's motive or personality, then it could be their own concern about themselves. I think that I was about to say, I'm like, no, Feyre had reason to believe that Elaine was not all mentally there.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said that the way that Feyre has always viewed Elaine as weak is her own insecurity about herself.
Yeah. I'm going to give a personal example, but I feel like it's extremely relevant to what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I always view my father as being extremely vain. And I don't mind that I said that because I say that to his face as well. And I ignore the fact that I have a lot of the same habits as him. And it took me until about a year ago, my mother told me why my father is like very worried about his teeth. And apparently he had a disease as a child that impacted his teeth that I had no clue about.
Oh.
And now I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Okay.
And now I feel like the asshole.
But I'll even move it to like a physical way. Like for me, when I see, because I have a double chin at every single weight I've ever been in my life, there's always been at least some form of a double chin there. And when I see people with amazing jawlines, like, you have such a great jawline, Amy.
Thank you.
And whenever I see women who have like really nice jawlines, that's always the first thing I look at. Or my mom, who has always been, back in the day, she's much more comfortable now, like more insecure with her nose. That's always the first thing that she looks at.
Yeah. We've talked about that before because I feel the same way. I hate my nose and you have a great nose.
Oh, thank you. I think you have an adorable nose.
Oh, thanks.
It's
See?
like a button. I just want to poke it. I want to boop your nose.
That's exactly why I dislike it. Everyone's like, oh, it's a cute button nose. I'm like, maybe I want a sophisticated nose.
Is my nose sophisticated?
Yes, it is.
Whoa. The only sophisticated thing on my body.
This is a very personal episode.
This is. They're getting a lot of personal facts about us this episode. Let me open up more.
The whole point of that discussion was because...
The whole point of us talking about father's nose, chins.
We choose to see what we want to see in people.
Yep.
We don't take the whole thing into perspective. And that's what Feyre's done to Jurian. Jurian could have been an ally when Feyre was in the Spring Court if she had stopped to consider finding out his true motives instead of making assumptions. Same goes for Tamlin, though admittedly might not have worked out. Jurian calls out Mor and Rhys for not trusting him or using their powers to learn where his loyalties lie. They chose to assume the worst about him, that he had gone mad, because of the decisions he made 500 years ago, which honestly, I don't know if I blame them or not, but it is what it is.
I can't remember. When does Jurian do the whole explanation that he did what he did because of Miriam, or like Miriam encouraged him? It's not now, obviously.
It's not now.
But later on, he talks about like the choices that he made.
Yeah, I think it's when Feyre goes to the Hybern camp and they run into each other.
Yeah. And it is interesting where I'm not justifying torture, but he explains it in a way that shows that everyone else judged him a little too harshly.
Right, that they didn't know the facts and oversimplified what was happening.
Yeah, like there's a lot of layers happening there.
Yeah.
And they're still missing that even now when they're realizing, wow, I was wrong. And they're still judging.
Because it's easier. It's easier than trying to understand the truth.
What is it about Jurian that kind of makes him a judging punching bag? I feel like he's one that everyone is happy to assume that he's not capable of growth.
To me, he is the 500-year-old equivalent of Tamlin. That he made poor choices that are easy to judge, but he did them thinking that they were the righteous thing to do.
Interesting. I can feel everyone's mind turning on that one collectively in the future from this recording. Jurian looks right at Mor and says, quote, "You are my friend. We fought back to back during some battles, and yet you believe me at first sight, believe that I'd ever let them turn me?" So I'm skipping ahead here, but later on, Mor will tell Feyre that she and Jurian weren't even that close. And that's always been a pain point to me, which, like, bitch move to say we weren't even friends. I don't even know why he's so obsessed with me. Who is telling the truth, though? Mor or Jurian? I have a feeling it's Jurian, and Mor doesn't want to admit something because historically, Mor doesn't want to admit things. Feyre describes the way Jurian says Mor's name as a familiar and knowing. I think that SJM is trying to lay some groundwork here on I don't know what, but there's groundwork happening.
Yeah, I mean, think of it this way. Mor's lover back then was a female queen who would then be very closely allied with Jurian, probably, because Jurian was helping lead the human resistance. Yeah. So on some level, to reject Jurian is to reject those painful memories, right? Because Jurian, on some level, has to remind Mor of her dead lover.
Yeah.
Also, think of it this way. Mor is also friends with Miriam and Draken, the way that Rhys is.
I would argue more so because Mor got really pissy, being like, Marion didn't touch him once.
Right. She was very defensive. Draken gifted her Seraphim blades. That was a tight-knit group. Mm-hmm. And Miriam used to be with Jurian.
Yeah, which, like, it doesn't matter if Miriam, I mean, I guess it does matter, but, like, Miriam was still, even if they broke up, she went to Draken really quickly because there was obviously emotional cheating happening.
Right. But my point is, if Mor was friends with Miriam the whole time, then she spent time with Jurian.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God. Just unlocked something. Yeah, you're right. This bullshit. Like,
a lot of bullshit.
I don't really know him. Never met him a day in my, never saw him once. But then suddenly, you're right. Like, they were together. It's as if, it would be as if someone went up to you and was like, oh, Jac's ex? You're like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I never really hung out with him. Which would be a lie.
Which would be a lie. It's not like we spent the entire pandemic together.
Anyway, I think Mor is lying.
I think you're right.
Jurian tells Rhys, quote, I expected you to look into my mind to see the truth. Now, I'm going to come to Rhys's defense and say I don't think that was an option. In Mist and Fury, Jurian appears at the same time that Rhys winnows in. In that couple of seconds, around that time, the King of Hybern is actively working on a spell to nullify all magic. Very few words are exchanged between the group when Rhys tries to winnow everyone out, but he's unable to because magic has then been nullified. Literally, it's probably 5 seconds. Was there a brief window where Rhys could have looked into Jurian's mind? Maybe. But I'm going to say that Rhys was probably distracted by trying to save everybody and trying to avoid Jurian.
I'm going to give Rhys double benefit of the double doubt. Like, not only was he a little busy, but the trauma, like what Rhys is saying, that the trauma of seeing Amarantha again, like, I think it's more than just that. I think it's the trauma of having a different point of view, of seeing himself being forced to sexually serve her.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about Jurian's eyeball on Amarantha's finger. Rhys is going to see himself in the throes of passion with Amarantha.
I mean, not even passion, throes of assault.
Right. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
It's horrible. It's a different point of view that no one should have.
Yeah. Yep.
Are we gonna see that for the live action series?
Oh, that's a thought I don't want to think right now.
Because it's not all gonna be in Feyre's point of view. We're gonna get some cutaways. Oh no!
Yeah, we're gonna see some traumatized Rhys point of view, I think.
Oh yeah, we are.
We learned that Jurian decided to wear the same mask as Tamlin when it came to Hybern, and the same mask that Feyre wore in the Spring Court. Quote, where better to plot your enemy's demise, to learn their weaknesses, than at their side? Again, Feyre was doing the exact same thing as Jurian, but because Feyre's friends and family got hurt by both Tamlin and Jurian, she could not stop to consider that she wasn't the only person wearing the mask of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Somehow she thinks she's the special one, and she's the only one doing that. In Jurian's case, though, his mask was far more convincing, probably, than Feyre's, for a reason I think aligns with Rhys's High Lord mask. Quote, it's what the world expects of me, what Hybern expects. And it's easy to be the wolf in sheep's clothing when people assume the worst about you.
Question. Why was it important to have this chapter be its own small section when it could have easily been meshed into 54? It's a very deliberate writing device and writing structure. What did SJM want us to take away from just these 3 pages?
For me, the focus of chapter 53 versus 54 are very, very different. Chapter 53 really focuses on Jurian and Jurian's sanity and the shock factor that comes with that, and the questioning of the perspective that we've been handed. Whereas chapter 54 moves on to the whole Grayson and Elaine relationship, and to mesh the two together would disservice Jurian and his role as an ally.
I mean, it also goes to the 2 coins of mad versus crazy.
Yeah.
Where they each have a storyline. And I think SJM's also trying to really prove a point of, hey, don't judge
a book by its cover.
Like, all these characters have screwed up. This isn't going to be resolved here. They're going to keep screwing up in this very specific type of way.
Yep, I agree. Speaking of chapter 54, At the start of this chapter, Rhys and Feyre use their Daemati powers to confirm that Jurian's not lying. Meanwhile, Elaine tries to convince Grayson she didn't mean to deceive him. Deception, lies, assumptions, these things are at the heart of a lot of the relationships and interactions in this war, and even sweet Elaine is not immune to it.
This is when the anti-Lucien thinking starts to really happen for Elaine. Quote, "And even with the truth laid bare, none of us told him that Lucien had gone after her. Elaine seemed to remember, though, and she said to Grayson, stone-faced and sorrowful through all of this, 'I did not mean to deceive you.'" This hurts. Elaine is shutting down because of Lucien. She's being pushed away from Grayson in her mind because of Lucien. When Elaine says, "I did not mean to deceive you," in my mind, the subtext is, "I didn't cheat on you." Even though Elaine doesn't know that Grayson knows about Lucien at this point, but I think Elaine is trying to convince herself that whatever vision she might have had about Lucien when he leaves, right? I'm convinced that she has a Lucien vision. And whatever tug she might have felt for Lucien, she did not cheat on Grayson. There's a heartbeat where Elaine defends Lucien in a way. Quote, Grayson says, "You are bound to some Fey male, a High Lord's son. His name is Lucien. I wasn't certain if I ever heard his name from her lips." Even when Elaine sees how pissed off Grayson is, even as she's realizing that she's truly losing him, her instinct is to defend Lucien by giving him a name, which is powerful. We've talked so many times in this book about how giving someone a name is powerful, which is why Grayson goes for blood after saying that he doesn't care about his name. But I also want to think about something where, as of the week that we're recording this, episode 10 just came out.
Episode 11.
Episode 11 just came out? It's the episode that Lucien left.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so episode 11. We're recording episode 16. There's been a lot of time, or maybe not time, but a lot of things have happened since Lucien leaving and this moment.
It's been less than a week.
Less than a week, but a lot of shit has gone down.
Yeah,
between
a lot of shit.
The summer court attack and then the High Lords meeting and then the wall coming down. A lot of things have happened. So yes, less than a week, but to me that shows Lucien's still on her mind.
Oh, yeah. And I think that her saying his name goes back to two things I was saying about Elaine earlier in this episode. First, to some extent, Elaine knows what to expect from Grayson and or his father. And that's why she's standing at the front of the group. And she is Faye. She knows she's Faye. She's just trying to fit in the human box.
Yeah.
And Grayson, being an asshole, is pushing her out of that box, which is going to go to something I say later about Elaine.
Yeah, it's such an asshole move. It's... And what's so frustrating is that, like, Elaine's takeaway is Grayson doesn't want me because of Lucien.
Right.
No, he doesn't want you because you're Faye, which is a you problem, not a Lucien problem.
Yeah, you're right. And nothing Elaine says makes a difference because Grayson's convinced that Elaine's mating bond with Lucien means that, quote, you belong to him.
And then Elaine says with her voice breaking that it means nothing, as in the bond, being mates. Grayson is arguing that Elaine belongs to Lucien, that she has a mate, as if that is the reason, like I was saying earlier, he doesn't want to be with her. BS. Her being a Fae is the problem. He's literally grabbing at anything he could at this point to make excuses. But I really need to hammer this point home, everyone. What Elaine is walking away with is Lucien equals no Grayson. Lucien is bad. Lucien's ownership. Lucien ruined everything.
Which is why she's going to push so hard against Lucien and the mating bond. Because the one person she ever wanted to want her doesn't want her anymore because of Lucien.
And who is the one person that we've made the connection to between Grayson and this character? And they have similar traits?
Azriel.
Yep.
I hate
it. Amy looks so sad.
I am sad. This moment is really, truly heartbreaking to me, and not just because Azriel and Grayson are the same. We've seen a lot this novel, though we don't always talk about it, that males of this world, both Fae and human, think in terms of possession. Elaine's response to me shows a moment of depth. Quote, I belong to no one, but my heart belongs to you. I could be wrong, but to me this screams empowered female, someone who realizes that they can't be owned unless they give their heart away of their own volition.
Yeah.
And to some extent, Elaine knows her worth. But Grayson doesn't want it. And that hurts Elaine because she is showing vulnerability. They probably had a deep emotional connection, and that's why she loved him. And any strong person would be hurt to have their heart thrown aside by someone they once trusted implicitly.
Elaine lost her virginity to Grayson.
Yeah.
Like, she thought she was going to marry him. She thought that,
it's more than they thought they were going to get married. They were engaged.
Yeah, they were engaged. Yeah, like, they were going to get married. And, the first person you love and the first person you're with, it's like...
That's a big deal.
It's a big, big deal. Like, and it all goes away. It is really hard. And the hardest part is when Elaine is going to realize Grayson was never the perfect match for her.
Yeah, and that's going to be a hard moment for her.
Yeah. I'm so curious if she's gone through that. I don't think so.
I guess we won't know until we get her point of view.
Because by admitting that Grayson wasn't the perfect match, you might be admitting that neither is Azriel.
Yeah, she's not ready for that.
Yeah. Oh, someone just had a thought.
I did just have a thought. This is a spoiler for the Silver Flames secret chapter. We're going to talk about this soon. Grayson demands the ring back. Elaine doesn't give it back. But Elaine gives Azriel the necklace back.
Wow.
There's a parallel there.
Yeah.
So to what extent do we open with Elaine's point of view and she's already figured out that Grayson and Azriel are the same? Because in some ways, Azriel rejects Elaine the way Grayson rejected her by choosing to not kiss her.
Oh, yeah. Her fear of rejection
is so strong.
Is going to be, way, way strong. Like,
and maybe that's part of her struggle over, like, she has to pursue Lucien but get over her fear of rejection.
Yeah,
because maybe he's pursuing Vasa by that point.
Yep. I mean, Feyre and Nesta never really had that whole fear of rejection thing.
Feyre did, kind of.
With who?
With Rhys, of just like, oh, this is just for fun.
Like,
it's not the same level, though.
Yeah, like, she was, like, neither sister were rejected by men they wanted.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Elaine had an engagement called off to her face. I'm not saying that this is bad on Elaine, but this is a demeaning moment.
Oh, yeah.
She's begging for him.
Yeah.
And he's demanding and yelling at her with this whole ring thing, which we'll get into in a minute. But it's really hard. Like, this is her lowest point so far.
Yep.
We can get lower.
Yep. Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
So let's call it what it is. Nolan and Grayson are prejudiced assholes. They might not be as bad as Hybern, but they're pretty bad. Not only do they hate the Fae, therefore hate Elaine, they also refuse to help other humans because, quote, I don't want riffraff wandering through here.
Riff-rat, street rat, I don't buy that. If only they looked close. Okay, I'm done.
Though they finally agree to take people in, thanks to Jurian's threatening them, that doesn't really change things. Grayson demands Elaine take off the engagement ring and says some pretty nasty, hurtful stuff about Fae women and Elaine, to which Nesta reacts very, very negatively.
On one hand, I respect Elaine for standing her ground and not taking the ring off when he demands it, because we don't listen to asshole men. Or good men. We just don't listen. I don't know if there's a life lesson there or not.
You only listen to good men if they call you good girl.
Damn!
Was that too much?
No, you're just not wrong. I just wasn't there, but now I am. Okay. I'm proud of her. She's doing a great job. Like I said, Grayson is demanding the ring and Elaine saying no. On one hand, I'm super proud of Elaine, right? Like, good job. On the other hand, I want to tell her, like, bestie, sis, don't fight for the thing that represents someone who doesn't want you. To quote Taylor, you got to leave before you get left. And although I don't condone that thought process necessarily, but I feel like at this point I would have sneaked the ring off. When I started going downhill,
yeah.
I would have just slipped that right off, handed it to Feyre and been like, hey, can you burn this for me?
Yeah.
Thank
just
you.
Melt it.
Yeah, just melt it. And my heart just warms when Rhys says, the lady keeps the ring if she wants it. I love it.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
Oh, sorry. I'm just wondering if Nesta appreciated him in that moment too. Probably.
At one point during this exchange, Feyre observes that, quote, Elaine turned white at the coarse language. I never really thought about this until I was prepping for this episode. This thought that Elaine turns white at the coarse language is really presumptuous of Feyre and might cause readers to wrongly believe that Elaine is a delicate flower. Because what if it's not the language Elaine's reacting to, but the side of Grayson who's being an asshole that she hasn't seen before?
Yeah.
It felt important to point out because this is the kind of unreliable narrator bullshit that influences readers to mischaracterize Elaine.
Yes, I agree with that. 100. Such a good freaking point. My poor ex-boyfriend, I'm going to bring him back in. He was a great guy. He is a great guy. But you knew him.
Yeah.
You know him. Amy, imagine him turning on me like this or something and using that type of language with me.
Yeah, you would freak out not because of the language, but because you've never been treated that way by him.
Oh, no, I would be like, who body snatched you?
Yeah.
Like, this is not you at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, you make a great freaking point. Like, if Grayson was only ever sweet and amazing to her, it could be like, also think about the terrifying later on Elaine's going to have to process. I would have married a monster.
Right. Like, she always assumed Grayson was better than his father, but apparently he's not. He's exactly the same as his father.
Yes.
And that's a terrifying thought.
That's a very terrifying thought. And early on, I didn't even touch this point, but Nesta says, I've been to funerals that have had, like, that have been happier than his ball. And Elaine says, this place has needed a woman's touch for years.
Yeah.
And how much did she want to fix what she saw?
Yeah. Yeah. That, like, all they need is a woman's influence and everything will be better.
Yep.
Which goes to the age-old fact that you can't change a man.
Yeah, you can't change anyone.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna get what you get. Accept it or don't.
Or move on.
Yeah, like, I mean, ideally, like, don't accept it if they're abusive. Like,
right.
Don't.
Like, just move on.
Yeah, move on. Also, let's take a moment for the slap heard around the world when Nesta straight up slaps Grayson across the face. I love it. I love her. I always wonder how she didn't manage to kill him.
Honestly, how did she not break his neck?
That's right. Like, aren't Fae supposed to be so strong?
Yeah. And Nesta's not very good at controlling herself.
Yeah, so to me, that shows that she had a lot of control.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
As they prepare to depart, Jurian tells Feyre, quote, "I never congratulated you for slaughtering Dagden and Branna. Good riddance." Feyre responds, "I did it for those children of the blessed, not for glory." Jurian replies, "I know. Why do you think I decided to trust you?" If you recall our conversation from earlier this season, Jurian was sussing out Feyre while they were both in the spring court, dropping clues that he was wearing a mask the entire time, which Feyre was too mad to pick up on. And mad as in angry, not mad as in crazy.
Yep.
What I find fascinating about Jurian's response right now is that there is a similarity to Feyre's values here. Feyre has demonstrated time and time again that loyalty is gained or earned through a willingness to die for one another. In a similar vein, Jurian is demonstrating to us that trust is gained through violence and killing of a mutual enemy. These values seem like cousins, if not siblings, to me. I bet Feyre would actually have had a really good relationship with Jurian if she allowed herself, because they're kind of the same.
I really like that. And we're going to get more of Jurian one day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This is just a little taste for the future.
I'm a fan of him.
But not as much as Eris, obviously.
You know what? No one knows what Eris is like. He'd say good girl.
He is a good girl kind of man.
Yeah.
We are back in the Illyrian war camp in chapter 55, the night before the first battle with Hybern. Feyre and Mor are in Feyre's tent talking about Jurian, and Mor is drinking wine. This is definitely a red flag for me, because I've been and sometimes am that person using alcohol as a crutch. And it's not that Mor's drinking, but the fact that she is swigging from her wine, implying swigging from a bottle, which, by the way, I don't do. So wine doesn't feel powerful here.
So, hold on. You're saying that you relate to Mor.
Yeah.
You're saying that you, the bi woman, relates to Mor, the hot bi. You, a hot bi woman, relates to the other hot bi woman. Does this mean I'm Feyre?
Do you want to be Feyre?
No, I don't think so. I don't want to, but I was like, as you're writing this, and you're like, here she is, Mor drinking with her bestie, just using it like, you're relating it to her, and I'm like, wait a minute. I think at this moment I might be Feyre.
You might be.
Just being like, oh, do you want more wine? Here you go. Feyre's not even funny.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Mor assumes Amarantha broke Jurian, and Feyre confirms that Jurian is broken in areas. Mor responds with this breadcrumb, quote, "We're all broken in our own ways, in places no one might see." Okay, this conversation feels less about Jurian than it does about Mor herself. She's swigging wine, talking about being broken. It's a huge cry for help on Mor's part. But Feyre's not paying attention, and instead she's worried about Elaine. As Feyre should be, she's just very bad at multitasking.
I need to have a stack of paper here to throw things at you when I agree with you. Because I violently agree with you.
You should just have like paper planes folded up that you can
just
throw
ready to go. I just want to every time you say something I agree with, I just want to throw something at you. I need to start bringing a stack of paper. But instead I will scream at you with how much I agree with you. Mor is in so much pain right now. It's seen in her actions and in her words. She's literally saying she's broken in a way that no one can see. And Feyre is just chilling there in her own mind like, damn, deep, Mor. I can't go any deeper than that. We know that Mor's likely talking about being bi and not being out, but I will bring up again that I think something happened with her and Jurian. And I'm not going to say it's a sexual thing. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of history there. Could be what Amy was talking about. Could be something else. But I think in this particular moment, it's more than just her being bi.
I think so too. And like I said earlier, Jurian probably reminds more of her past dead lover. There's a lot of history between those two, and Mor is broken from it.
Yep.
It's just a matter of fact.
Harsh facts.
Harsh facts. I will hand it to Feyre, though. She has grown compared to the Feyre who infiltrated the Spring Court at the start of this novel. Quote, "I debated returning to smash every bone in Grayson's body, but resisted, if only because it would give Nesta license to unleash herself upon him." This is growth. Feyre is thinking about consequences of actions she wants to perform but has not yet performed. Feyre from chapter 1 of this book would have destroyed Grayson. Instead, she understands that her example would have consequences and negatively impact how Nesta acts, And that is how to be a high lady.
She's getting into her own self.
Yeah. She's becoming more aware.
Proud of her.
We know from Feyre's thoughts that Elaine is once again distraught. Feyre believes all the progress Elaine has made has been destroyed. But I want to suggest otherwise. I think Elaine is distraught because she's mourning her humanity. Quote, Elaine silently cried, the tears so unending I wondered if it was some sign of her heart bleeding out, some sliver of hope that had been shattered today. A final tether had been snapped to her life in the human lands. Elaine is sad and crying as one would expect, but it's as if her heart is bleeding out. Maybe what remains of her human heart.
Yes, I totally agree. I think Feyre doesn't have a clear image on Elaine. Elaine is crying and is upset, but she isn't being self-destructive. She's mourning, like you said, her human life. Now, does she eventually accept the fact that she's Fae and moves on? I don't know. We don't know where she is at mentally at the end of Silver Flames. But in this moment, Elaine is mourning, and that's okay. I can't imagine going through a breakup like that in a war camp. Mm-hmm. When I went through mine, I lived on your apartment. Like, how are you supposed to go through a breakup if you don't have a couch to then move into full time? Like, this couch is my home now.
Yeah. I mean, Elaine does have a tent that she just walks into blindly every time they move the camp. Like, let me go to my cot.
No, that would be such a shitty, like, no, you have to have a couch that isn't yours.
An animal that will lick your face.
You have to play Death by a Thousand Cuts and Happier over and over again. And then you have to watch a series of sad movies.
I hope that day never comes for me.
Hopefully not you, but if any of our listeners have a great playlist.
She does have a great playlist.
It's about the journey of the breakup.
It's like 5.5 hours long, by the way.
It is. You listen to the whole thing.
On a road trip.
On a road trip. And then we had notes and we discussed it. I'll post it somewhere, but I have like a great breakup playlist to help you get through it.
To further my claim that Elaine is mourning her humanity. Elaine's engagement to Grayson is symbolized by the engagement ring Elaine still wears. It was Elaine's last connection to her past life, her human life. For that tether to snap, for that hope to shatter, means that Elaine has to face the reality of her fayness. Her refusal to give back or remove the engagement ring is symbolic to me of her desire to continue to cling to her humanity. Maybe she cries less for the past and more for the unknown of her future and what it means to be Fae.
Feyre says, quote, only our father, wherever he is, remains as any sort of a connection. It's just so spot on.
Yeah, it is.
A little on the nose there, but it's the connection to their human life and all that. And we see this hit Nesta extra hard, obviously, in Silver Flames. I need to stop being curious out loud because I just feel like I'm repeating it over and over again. But like, how does Elaine handle it?
Yeah. And we're not going to know for a while.
No, because we just get Nesta's point of view that everyone else handled it just fine. They went and visited the grave and I never did. And they're totally healed and fine.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Before Moore leaves so that Feyre can sleep, Moore says, quote, it's so much harder when enemies turn into friends. And the opposite, I suppose. What didn't I see? What did I overlook or dismiss? It always makes me reassess myself more than them. To me, this is so meta. And what do I mean?
Wait, I just want to tell the listeners, brace yourselves.
Brace yourself.
Because Amy's about to make a great fucking point.
In writing, metafiction, shortened here to meta, is when the narrative forces the reader to remember that they're reading, that they are outside the story. This can be done when the author writes about writing, writes about a story within a story, or writes about a character reading. These are some very simple examples. In this case, this sentence is meta because it forces us as readers to think about our own assumptions about the characters we've come across throughout the series. While it could be accidental, I think SJM is commenting to a degree about us as readers as much as the inner circle making assumptions about individuals like Jurian, Tamlin, and Rhysand throughout the series. Think of it this way. How much did you or I love Tamlin the first time we read him, and Feyre in Thorns and Roses? We wanted them to be together. Mm-hmm. We wanted them to kiss and have sex. Mm-hmm. How many of us were shocked by the red flags that we found during season 1? There were so many, and so many times people were like, I missed all of them.
Oh, yeah.
The same goes for our relationship as readers with Rhysand the first time we read him in Thorns and Roses. Both Tamlin and Rhysand are individuals who've done 180 in our minds, friend to enemy and enemy to friend. What did you not see the first time you read the series? What did you overlook or dismiss as a reader? I mean, Jorian's a great example too. Like, how many of us were shocked that he's like, oh, I'm just playing pretend?
I will always, always remember when I read Mist and Fury, how much it rocked my world of this concept of like SJM played into every single trope of a male lead with Tamlin, did all the things that we loved. And then in Mist and Fury, just thinking like, oh my God, like she pulled it, like, you know, she pulled the rug from underneath us. Like everything that made us fall in love with him is the reason why he's the problem.
Yeah.
And again, like I was in it when it all first came out, and I just remember like sitting with that for a long time, and it shaped the way that I write genuinely.
Yeah.
It made such an impact on me that it changed everything. Also, like I just need that stack of paper so I can throw at you. It's just so proud of you. I can hurt you.
Thanks. Thanks. And so Moore's comment, what didn't I see? What did I overlook or dismiss? It makes me reassess myself more than them. That is as much about Moore as it is about Feyre and the inner circle and about us and what we accept from the tropes that we read. And that is why it is meta.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming from Moore, a character that we've done assumptions on.
Yeah.
Who, you know, we keep talking about like, what the hell, SJM? Why is there nothing on her? Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, wait, was it done on purpose to like have so little of her? And then she's the one who's making this point of like, wow, people really judge someone that they don't know.
Oh, that hurts a lot.
Right?
Like, how much have we overlooked with Moore and just been mad at her?
Yeah.
Am I the problem?
No, SJM didn't give us enough stuff. It's her. But it just is like such a common, like, you know, SJM's not dumb. She has to know that she has not given us enough about Moore compared to everyone else on the inner circle.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's calling us out for what are you assuming about Moore just because you don't have all the info.
Wow.
Neither Feyre nor Rhys can sleep that night, just like I'm not going to sleep tonight. Together, they watch for dawn.
Why aren't you sleeping tonight?
Because now I'm going to think about my assumptions of Moore.
You're going to lay in bed staring at the ceiling and be like, what else did I assume?
Am I the problem?
It's me. Hi. I'm the problem.
It's me.
I want to give a chef's kiss moment to this line. Quote, Rhys kissed the top of my head as we stared at the dying stars in silence. The dying stars, it's so good because they're seeing the dying stars only to meet the dawn with more death.
It is such a good point. SJM is so good at conveying the characters' thoughts or emotions in their descriptions of the environment. Like, obviously, Feyre is dreading this battle that's about to come, assuming that there's going to be a lot of death. And that's conveyed in her description as the stars dying.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Brilliant.
Before day breaks, Rhys tells Feyre how he is grateful to have Feyre by his side. Something about this moment feels very much like foreshadowing Rhys's death, but also a mirror of that finale when Feyre warns him. Quote, I blinked back the burning in my eyes and took his hand. I laid it over my heart, letting him feel it beating while I kissed him one final time. Like, as in a goodbye kiss? Is it just me? Maybe this feels like the first evolution that comes before Rhys's death, which is the final evolution, like a Pokemon. Here, Feyre tries not to cry, where at the end of the book she will sob and howl. Feyre makes Rhys feel her heartbeat, where at the end she's not going to feel his heartbeat after they've repaired the cauldron. And it's just very painful.
Like, we have so many emotional, like, all the emotional stuff coming up. The cereal, the father's death, Rhys's death.
I'm going to intellectualize the shit out of it so I don't get emotional.
Too late, I already am emotional. When you think SJM has set up enough heartbreak for us, like, she just sets it up more.
Yeah.
She's doing emotional Jenga. She's putting more and more emotions on top of one another so that when it comes falling down.
And it's all unstable.
Yeah. I mean, it just cracks me up where she's done enough work. We love these two characters.
Yeah, but she's laying it on thick.
She does. And I never realized how much she was laying it on thick. Well, I think I always knew that they were just so lovey-dovey. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But now I have such a better appreciation for the fact that it's not just them being so lovey. It's her saying, I'm going to make you hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. I want you to sob your eyes out.
Which I will.
And I did.
Yeah.
Chapter 56 opens with the battle on Hybern, where the Illyrians surprise Hybern's forces, just as Jurian had advised. Note that Rhys cloaks the entire army as they approach Hybern. Quote, Sweat slid down his temple at the strain, at keeping the mass of us hidden from sight and sound and scent as we flew mile after mile. This isn't the first time we've seen Rhys's strength challenged in Wings and Ruin. Although Rhys has shown us he is stronger than all the other High Lords, he has to struggle for readers to feel that the stakes are high, that there is a chance he won't survive, or that the good guys might not win. This is one example of many we're going to continue to see, and it's important to point out.
We get this amazing imagery of the Illyrians and the Darkbringers coming together, and I just want this fan fiction of like two soldiers, and they both look at one another, one from the Illyrians, one from the Darkbringers, and they see each other from across the field. I don't know. I don't write war. They fall in love. That's all I want. That's all I want. There we go.
They find each other after the war.
They're like, I love you. I love you. Question.
Even though I don't know you.
I didn't have to know you to know I loved you.
It's so problematic.
It is. It's one of those lines that you think would sound romantic in a book or something, but when you think about it, you're like, wait a minute, what?
It's like the Savage Garden song, I Knew I Loved You Before I Met You.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I dreamed you into life.
Yeah.
Fucking love that song. So problematic.
Yeah. It's like, did you dream the opinions I'm going to have?
Nope.
Did you dream about the sleep apnea? I'm pretty sure I have. Question. SJM makes Rhys, Cassian, and Azriel's uniform different from the rest of the military. I just feel like that's not strategically smart.
I've thought about this, and I feel like you have to make the people in charge look different so that when people are shouting at you, you know which one to pay attention to.
They should know who it is.
But what if they all look the same?
Like Rhys is the one flying above them yelling orders.
But all the Illyrians are flying.
Oh, right. Okay, so he's flying above them. Shouting I mean, he's the only one who's shouting orders.
Cassian is too.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter what outfit they're wearing. They're shouting orders. He listens to the person who's shouting orders.
But what if some rando what if some rando is dressed like Cassian and yells retreat? How do the people know not to retreat?
I think we just became war strategists. Here's the plan. We dress up like the opposite side.
You know what? I can't blame SJM for this because in every like ancient war movie, the commander looks different somehow.
It's really funny because when we were talking about this, we're like, what do we know of ancient battles? Like, we don't know shit about
No, we
fighting.
don't. It's just what the media has told us.
It's like you're basing it off a video game. I'm basing it off of
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. It's not great. It's, though, SJM gets criticized amongst readers that she's not good at the war scenes.
Yeah.
I was reading this. I'm like, what's wrong with it?
Some people want more description of the actual fighting.
No, that's fair.
She doesn't dwell in the details of the fighting.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it just depends on what kind of reader you are.
Maybe she doesn't know how the fighting
Yeah,
fights.
maybe that's not her strength because I know that's not my strength and I dread writing fight scenes.
I mean, I can do one-on-one fight scenes, but like a whole battleground, like you just kind of get the gist. They're all fighting, dying.
Yeah.
Wearing different outfits.
Yeah.
Outfits, they're uniforms. Costumes. I think I called them costumes last night.
You did.
They're in different costumes.
We continue to see evidence of Feyre's growth as she watches the battle go on. Her pride from earlier in Wings and Ruin has been replaced with self-awareness. Quote, "There was no place for me on those front lines, where the Illyrians fought by the strength of their sword, their power, and their trust in the male on either side of them. I would have been a fisher in that impenetrable armor." Instead of thinking Feyre is powerful or skilled enough to help with the army to fight in the legions, Feyre has realized her lack of training and knowledge when it comes to their fighting tactics would have been a weakness, and that an army cannot afford that type of weakness. That's not to say that Feyre is not capable of contributing, just that she would not be useful on the front lines.
Why has no one, not even Feyre or Rhys, strategized that Feyre could use her superpowers to fight? I know she figures it out, and we get some of that in Mist and Fury, and we get that when she's at the Summer Court attack, but I feel like there's an opportunity to send an army of water wolves or drown the enemy like Tarquin does. If she's strong enough to fight High Lords, how is she too weak to help now?
I honestly think she doesn't have the stamina.
Yeah, then just like have her be like, I don't know, first wave, second wave, something Just like one good water wolf attack.
Yeah, maybe.
It's only because like she gets into it more later of like, I don't know if I could help. And, you know, she doesn't have to be in there fighting.
Yeah.
But from where she stands.
Could she do something?
I think she could.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
Me. But I'm an overachiever.
And you expect a lot out of the people around you.
I expect excellence.
Yeah, you do.
And superpowers.
And Feyre's not giving us excellence right now.
Or superpowers.
Yep, she's holding back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can be friends.
But like we can.
Yeah.
Because you provide
Feyre.
excellence and
Thank you.
superpowers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You do too.
Ooh, what are my superpowers? Because I know yours.
Humor.
Oh, math. For you. You can calculate a tip faster than anyone I know.
Together, Feyre and Mor watch Cassian go head to head with a Hybern commander. Feyre marvels at the way Cassian moves through the battle to get to the commander. Quote, I'd never seen anything like it. The skill and precision. It was like a dance. I must have said it aloud because Mor replied, for him, that's what battle is, a symphony. Her eyes did not stray from Cassian's death dance.
Silver flames. Nesta is a dancer.
Yeah, you make a great point. And I just realized Mor, Feyre said dance, you said symphony. Those are two very different things.
Yeah, actually.
Anyway,
Huh.
Look at Mor not listening. Look at me and my prejudice against Mor.
Let's go back to ignoring the fact that SJM warned us not to do this.
Later on in the battle, Cassian picks up a spear and hurls it at the commander. Quote, his entire body going into the throw, the movement so perfect that I knew I'd one day paint it. Feyre's descriptions of Cassian and his ability to fight makes the whole thing seem romantic. And not in a way that Mor loves Cassian or anything, but in a way that it is artistic and beautiful. Feyre's descriptions are romanticizing the battle when a page later we're going to see the gore and brutality of it. And I think it's intentional on SJM's part to show battle this way, that there is both beauty and terror. Where Cassian's strength and command is finely crafted, it is balanced out with Tarquin's decision to not be merciful and to drown the Hybern survivors who beg for clemency.
I want to talk about Tarquin drowning the survivors begging to live. Back in Mist and Fury, I would have said that Tarquin would never do something like this. Never kill like that without a second thought and without giving them a chance. But a lot has happened since then. Rhys and Feyre stole from him, and then there was the attack on the city, and then there was the High Lords meeting. We examined the main characters and discussed their own development, but in this book in particular, a lot of characters have been growing and developing off-screen, and that takes a lot of talent and just shows that SJM is a good writer. Think about Nesta. She's been doing a lot of growth off-camera, and so is Tarquin.
Yeah. I mean, and we saw that with Rhys in Mist and Fury.
Mm-hmm.
It's pure talent.
Pure talent.
Throughout the battle sequence, you may have noticed the use of the sun. I'm going to read a handful of quotes. Bodies gleamed in the morning sun, light bouncing off their armor. Cassian's sword caught the sunlight as it lifted and plunged down into the Hybern commander. When Mor says it's over, the sun was high in the sky. The Hybern soldiers were thrashing and clawing at themselves, some trying to crawl away, but then one of them collapsed, the sunlight caught on his face. What does it all mean? Sunlight has been associated with truth, with mates, with Lucian and Elaine. Here, maybe it's a sign of righteousness, of good prevailing despite the ugliness of battle. Also, the sun foreshadows victory, because the next battle, there's a lot of rain, and they don't do as well. Nesta listens to the Illyrians talk about Cassian after the battle is over, and offers to help cut bandages. Why is that romantic to me? Because it is.
You make a compelling argument.
Thank you. Let me go further. Maybe it's because when Cassian approaches, Nesta can tell that Cassian is hurt when no one else is able to detect it. Did Nesta offer to help cut bandages because somewhere in her bond with Cassian, she subconsciously knew he was hurt?
One time during a live, one of our listeners said that Elaine would do Azriel good, as in improve him, make him a better person. And Amy, you and I talked about how, that's maybe not really the goal to strive for, how a partner shouldn't be a tool to better yourself. But when you're with the right person, you'll both grow and be a better person naturally. To me, this is what's happening with Nesta. I like to imagine that Nesta is helping because it was right, because Cassian was out there risking his life and she needs to do better, to do her part. It feels natural. These moments of wanting to be a better person and Nesta wanting to be the person that Cassian sees in her.
Yeah, I love that. Cassian does a lot of risking his life by being on the front lines of war and leading a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Nesta's like, well, the least I can do is help cut bandages and like patch people up because I'm not capable of putting my life at risk. But
she's inspired by that.
Yeah, she respects him enough to want to do better.
Yep.
Feyre thinks, quote, how Nesta had detected Cassian's injury through the armor. She must have read it in his eyes, his stance. I hadn't realized she'd been observing the Illyrian general enough to notice his tells. Ah, my heart.
It explodes.
Feyre also pays attention to how Nesta appears. It is significant that Nesta's hair, which is normally in an updo, has stray tendrils. Faint color stains her cheeks, and her sleeves are rolled up. Nesta, in her own way, has become unguarded and more open, and that's portrayed in her appearance. This reminds me of analyses of Star Wars and how the heroines always go from updos to unbound hair when they fall in love, and I feel like Nesta has just become Padme, Leia, and Rey.
Also, in How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, Andy Anderson, her hair goes from curly when she's her true self and straight when she's trying to be something she's not.
The power of cinema.
Power of cinema. Star Wars and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. When Nesta sees Cassian's injury, she says, how do I fix it? And I love the phrasing of that. It's both cold and consuming. It takes on a responsibility that was never hers. I'm going to read parts of Nesta treating Cassian. Quote, she washed his wrist, his hands, her own fingers gentle. Cassian seemed too wary to speak as well while she wrapped bandages around his wrist. But he watched her, didn't take his eyes off of her face. Nesta made to pull back. Cassian grabbed her fingers in his good hand. Thank you, he said hoarsely. Nesta did not yank her hand away. Cassian brushed a thumb down the back of her hand. I mean, is it steamy in here or is it just me? Like, not only was that extremely hot and intimate, but what does it focus on? Hands, a sign of power and intimacy. And it also makes me reflect on how Feyre washed Rhys's hands after he killed the ravens.
Ugh, something about hands is just hot.
It's just, add a forearm in there. Woo. Add a forearm.
Yeah. Add a veiny forearm.
Ooh.
We see evidence of Nesta and Cassian's affection for each other when Nesta treats Cassian. And then they stare at each other for a while after. Then they're interrupted by Mor. Note that Cassian turns away from Nesta when Mor approaches. Maybe this is meant to make us as readers believe that Mor and Cassian are into each other. But we know that Cassian's also very good at protecting others from Mor and vice versa. Mor has been an ass to Nesta in the past, so it makes sense that Cassian would try to protect Nesta from Mor when Mor's probably riled up from watching the battle anyway. And Cassian has just had a really special moment with Nesta that he doesn't want Mor to mock or ruin. Unfortunately, Nesta misinterprets this and doesn't come back.
I'm so mad. Like, this part of the book brought me the single most anger. And I'll fucking say it, even more than the High Lords meeting.
Wow.
Yeah, I am fuming. I will never forgive Mor for this. Like, she just walked in and invaded the situation and made it her own.
Yeah, she's not very good at reading the room. She doesn't really care.
She doesn't care.
It's about her.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same way that she purposely hurt Asriel at the High Lords meeting by sleeping with Helion. Her goal was to hurt him.
Yeah.
And her goal walking in was to dominate this room. Like, and I know people might say she was just worried about Cassian and stuff, but like, it's just a bandaged wrist. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like he has blood gushing out. It's a sprain. And she's suddenly like walking in like, oh my God, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
It's not about you more. And I think in that moment, it felt very much about her.
Yeah.
And like on my deathbed, like, I don't forgive you more. Like, Talon has a lot to redeem, but this scene.
Yeah, between I mean, I've been editing episode 13, and you were very mad at Mor then, too, when she cock-blocks Nesta. So there's a lot to be mad at Mor about.
Yeah, because she just does it on purpose. Like, you can't tell me that it's not on purpose anymore.
Yeah.
And I thought Mor and Nesta had been chill because they haven't really gotten into it recently.
Yeah.
But because of her cock-blocking Nesta forever ago, and because of all, like, this history of Mor stopping Cassian from having a remote amount of joy, it makes this moment feel so on purpose for me.
Yeah. I think she's used to dominating both Azriel and Cassian's
attention.
Yeah.
And it's shitty because I don't want to, like, I hate reducing the sum of a woman into their view of men.
Yeah.
Or how they view and want to be, you know.
Want to be viewed by men.
Want to be viewed by men. I don't like doing that. But you're not giving me much else to work with here, Mor.
I think that speaks to Mor's trauma and the fact that she just has not dealt with any of her issues.
Yeah. I don't want to be like, hurt yourself and no one else, but like, you know, don't hurt yourself, ideally. Like, you know, treat it. But it sucks when people's hurt actively goes and messes with other people's pain.
Yep, I agree.
She actively hurt Azriel and she's actively cock-blocking Nesta. I won't forgive you. Rhys is unable to settle after the battle, and Feyre has sex with him despite her own fatigue, but, you know, sounds like it was still a good time.
Yeah.
Sex and death, it's all intertwined. Sex and power. After they have sex, Rhys kneels before Feyre, and she keeps tracing his tattoos, remembering how he kneels before no one. And in the past, it was sexy as hell, but now there's a added layer of intimacy. Feyre gets up, and she kneels before him as well, so that they are knee to knee. She's showing Rhys that he isn't alone. It's in this position that Feyre feels like she's able to bear a bit more of her soul and fears to him.
Feyre admits to Rhys that while she was willing and able to fight in battles like the attacks on Velaris and Adriata, she's unable to fight in arranged warfare like the battle she just witnessed. Quote, line against line, swinging and stabbing until I didn't know up from down, until mud and gore blurred the line between enemy and foe, and the closeness of it, the sounds and sheer scale of the bloodbath. Something about this makes war sound intimate. Replace the war and battle-related words, and it's not unlike a description of sex. Skin against skin, thrusting until I didn't know up from down until we blurred the line between us, and the closeness of it, the sounds and sheer scale of my feelings, I thought I might explode. Sex and violence, sex and death, it doesn't end. Rhys tells Feyre that if she ever wants to fight by his side, it would be his honor. And that's definitely a bitch slap in Tamlin's face without being explicit about it. Rhys does that a lot. He's very good at it.
Oh, very good.
Feyre wonders, quote, if Tamlin was with Hybern, if he'd whispered to Hybern everything that had been discussed in that meeting with the High Lords, the weaknesses between courts. And it's like Feyre didn't hear Mor at all when she was being meta and does not even think twice about making assumptions about Tamlin again.
Yeah.
Rhys, Feyre, and Cressida work on the glamours that will make it seem like the Night and Summer Court armies are staying put when they decide to go meet the other part of Hybern's army headed toward the Winter Court. Feyre and Cressida work together with no resentment or ire despite what happened between them in Mist and Fury, and I love that. Although, is it also kind of convenient as a writer? Maybe.
Right? I totally get it. This is a long book. SJM is probably thinking there's enough shit she needs to cover. But they're at peace. People can deal. People being the readers. Although I will say that I felt like their peace happened at the High Lords meeting when Cressida said that she would fight with Feyre.
Yeah, I agreed.
But like, we don't have to get any more than that. It's fine. SJM has more to cover.
Yep. Remember earlier this season how I compared the fact that Tamlin couldn't winnow a few people more than a few miles at a time? On the other hand, Rhys could winnow the whole Illyrian army into the Summer Court. Well, we see in this chapter that Tarquin is able to winnow his army as well. And it made me stop to wonder if we go back to the earlier chapters, it's not that Tamlin couldn't winnow the Hybern commanders to the wall, but he did it a little bit at a time, deliberately, to buy himself and everybody else time. This is me trying to take Mor's advice.
I love it, because I think you're onto something. He is a High Lord. Tamlin has to be powerful enough to winnow more than a few people at once.
And more than a few miles at once.
I forgot Tarquin winnows his army.
Yeah, I did too.
And when he did that, I was like, oh shit, I thought only Rhys could do that?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And Tarquin doesn't come off as particularly strong.
No. In fact, Tamlin comes across as stronger than Tarquin.
Yeah, because Tarquin was the only reason why Tarquin is High Lord is because everyone else died ahead of him.
Yeah, exactly.
So he wasn't, I always interpret him as being the weaker one because he was never meant to be the most powerful.
Right. And he's barely like 80 years old or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it really, that moment made me realize, oh, unreliable narrator again.
Right?
Like,
and we don't really talk about Jurian, or when Jurian revealed to Feyre and Rhys that Tamlin went back and told Hybern everything. And the reason why you and I didn't talk about it is because Feyre doesn't really talk about it.
Yeah.
Which, again, does she not talk about it because she doesn't fully believe it? Or we don't want to question it too much? It was just an interesting thing where we never really got the whole, wow, I can't believe Tamlin went back. Let's talk about this, Rhys.
Because it's so easy to assume that Tamlin would betray them.
Yeah.
Because it appears that he already has once. Like, they did not trust him.
Yeah.
And even though they said they trusted him during the High Lords meeting, they obviously didn't because they didn't seem shocked.
I almost feel like Feyre doesn't believe that Tamlin went back. And I think that's the reason why we're not hearing her think about it too much. Because if she were to think about it, she would actually question and not defend him, but give him the benefit of the doubt in her head.
Yeah.
And I think that alone is like too much for her.
Yeah, too much. She doesn't want it to take up that much mental space.
Yeah.
As the second battle begins, the weather changes from sunlight to rain, foreshadowing the difficulties of the battle ahead. Not only that, but the group lands with sycamore trees behind them. Sycamore trees have bark that has a camouflage pattern with a different color wood beneath it. This is such a clever addition from Sarah J. Maas when you know that Hybern is also disguising their army and have successfully fooled Rhysand and company into thinking that they're tired and settling down for the night, when instead they're actually prepared to fight. As the battle goes on, SJM continues the water-related imagery as the rain comes down. Quote, like a burst dam, Hybern's soldiers poured through, cleaving Kyr's force in half. I knew little of war, of battle, but it felt like patching up holes in a boat while it sank. It's little details like this that make Sarah J. Maas's writing so good. The water references make it feel like the good guys are drowning and raises the stakes for the reader.
And then Feyre goes off to find the cereal, and next week we can talk about if that even makes sense or not.
Yeah.
To leave this battle.
Yeah. Future me can think about that.
Yep. Let's get into some breadcrumbs, but first, spoiler for everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Spoiler for everything. Chapter 51, quote, there were only a few female fighters in the legion of Illyrians. Now was not the time to test the tolerance of the Illyrians. Later, if we won this war, if we survived. Well, that tolerance is going to get tested by Nesta and her friends, and it will go poorly.
Also in 51, Lord Devlin tells the inner circle to keep her, Nesta, away from females and children, which is basically how everyone treats her in Silver Flames, and it's funny because she saves Nyx.
So maybe don't keep her away from the women and children.
Yeah. Yeah.
In chapter 54, Jurian speaks of his plans, quote, the next move, Rhysand, is me going back to that Hybern war camp and throwing a fit that my search for Miriam and Draken's whereabouts wasn't fruitful. And once that's done, who knows? Perhaps I'll join you on the battlefield. Feyre's going to see Jurian at the Hybern camp and on the battlefield, and Miriam and Draken are going to show up. It's just like a lot of foreshadowing.
Chapter 55, quote, my sisters were in another tent, not quite as big, but equally luxurious, their lodgings flanked by Cassian and Azriel's tents, and moors before it. No one would get to them without my friends knowing, right? No. Well, that's some unfortunate foreshadowing because Elaine disappears very soon.
Dun, dun, dun. Quote, only our father, wherever he was, remained as any sort of connection. Sarah J. Maas is really good at reminding us of absent Papa Archeron so that it doesn't feel absurd when he shows up.
Yeah. Like, you have a father, don't forget.
Yeah.
In chapter 56, Feyre is unable to fly with the army when they go to attack Hybern. Quote, we flew mile after mile. My wings weren't strong enough, so Mor winnowed us through the sky. So obviously we have every right to be concerned when Feyre has to fly to escape later on when she infiltrates the Hybern camp.
Because we keep getting reminded she cannot fly.
She can't fly.
Also in chapter 56, quote, Nesta listened to the low-level Illyrian soldiers whispering about how Cassian had thrown that spear, how he'd fought like Enalius, their most ancient warrior god and the first of the Illyrians. Maybe this is significant to Cassian's parentage, and maybe it's relevant to the multiverse. I have no clue, but maybe.
Maybe. And finally, also in chapter 56, as Feyre, Mor, and Nesta tend to the wounded, Feyre observes, quote, I knew the various recountings of the battle wore on Mor, not for the tales of glory and gore, but for the sole fact that she had not been there to fight beside them. And that's an important fact for Feyre to have noticed, because in the next chapter, she's going to convince her to let her go so she can go serial hunting. Or convinces Mor to go into the war. You know, guys, you know.
Yeah. Basically, Mor's got to be convinced, so we got to know that Mor wants to go fight.
Yep.
Let's go back to the questions from the start of the episode. Are the characters and readers expected to reassess themselves and their assumptions at this point in the novel, and are we successful?
Okay, so yes, we're definitely expected to reassess things because that's what we're getting here, but we are getting close towards that last 25%. I think we are in that last 25%. I can't do math. It's your superpower, not mine.
We're about to hit it, yeah.
It's just fascinating. And this is more of a celebration of SJM as a writer, how much she can do in the last 25%, because this is her saying, okay, everyone, you need to, really question yourselves, which is a weird thing to do so late in the book, which she's done it over and over again, but this is another one. And people aren't going to really walk away with that. Like, there's still going to be more surprises about twists and turns and how people actually are. And whoa, you're not who I thought you were type of situation. And for multiple characters, it's not just Tamlin.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The good guys prevail because everything we don't expect to happen happens. All of our misconceptions of these characters come back in the best way to help everybody succeed. Yeah. Like, think about it this way. At this point, we are assuming the worst of Tamlin. We're assuming the worst of Baron. We're assuming the worst of Grayson and Nolan. All those people help out at the end. Yeah. Tamlin multiple times in ways that he did not need to. But we're not in a place to process that. And again, this is a war book, but the war doesn't actually happen until the last 25%. Right. And people, like we were saying earlier, people criticize that maybe war isn't her strongest writing, but the war isn't the war. The war is with characters with themselves. Right. Like, there's so much character development happening that she is just shoving in last minute, but it doesn't feel rushed or forced. It feels natural. It feels like all this buildup has been happening for all these last minute twists and turns. Yeah. I think you make a great point. This might be a war novel, but SJM is not a battle writer. The battle is our perspectives and the perspectives of the main characters and what they force on other people, on other characters.
It's an internal battle.
It's completely. It's a battle internal to themselves. It's interpersonal. Yep. That's the real war. Yeah. And accepting that you might not like the people around you, but at the end of the day, they're still your allies.
Yeah. It's great. And again, in the last 25%, normally, the climax happens at the end, which it does with her, but I feel like her climax is always the last 50 pages. Like, writing style wise, her last 25% historically with all of her books, it always gets kind of crazy and it's a huge whirlwind, but it also is done so freaking well.
Yeah. Plot wise, sure. When you look at an action point of view, it's all happening in the last 25%. But this entire novel has been about tearing down our understanding of these characters. And her plot only works because she's done the work on the character development. And this is kind of the climax for me when it comes to character development. Yep. And the rest is just the follow through.
And SJM is a phenomenal character-driven author. She does amazing jobs with that. And, we said it before, but I'll say it again. I will always rather a character-driven novel than a heavy magic world plot. Plot or, what's the world building type thing. I do like plot and she does give us plot, but she's so strong with her character development.
Yep, I agree. And now this week's featured podcast review.
This review is from Haley called Obsessed. I love this podcast. I found it last week and caught up today. Often when we read a really good book, we get nostalgic about the first time through the story. This show has allowed me to almost experience the series for the first time again. It's added a depth to my thoughts when reading and hopefully my writing.
Oh,
Thank
you. I also feel like I get to experience the books for the first time again doing the show.
Oh my God, yeah.
They are completely different books than what I remember.
Every time I'm just like, wait, that happened?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Honestly, rereading the book and then discussing it with you, it's like I've read the book 3 different times and each time was the first time.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, especially when our notes come together.
Yeah.
I also get like warm, fuzzy feelings whenever someone says that we help with their writing.
Yeah, I do too.
Like, I'm like, oh.
That was the whole goal for us too.
Yeah, we wanted to help our own writing.
Yeah. So, yay.
Thank
At least
you.
somebody benefited.
Thank you, Haley.
If you would like to have your review featured on the podcast, please leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we will be exploring chapters 57 through 62 of A Court of Wings and Ruin.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle booktalkforbooktalk. Bye.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.